When I moved back to my small hometown, I thought it would be simple. I was 32 and had come to help my aging father. The first few weeks felt normal. I settled into my rented house and reconnected with old friends. But that changed on a stormy night. I went up to the attic to look for some boxes. As I rummaged through the dust, I found an old diary. It was hidden in a corner, covered in grime. I opened it, curious about what stories it held inside. The pages were filled with strange encounters and unsettling events from years ago. Something about it felt off, but I read a few passages out loud anyway. Then I heard knocks. They were faint but clear, coming from the walls. I stopped. It felt wrong. I looked around, but nothing was there. I felt uneasy. The rain started to fall heavily over the next few weeks. That's when strange things began happening. I saw flickers of shadows through my windows at night. I heard whispers when I was sure I was alone. The words from the diary kept popping into my head as if they were trying to tell me something. When I mentioned it to friends, they shrugged it off. I figured I was just imagining it. One especially wild night, I invited a few friends over. It was pouring outside, and I hoped to show them I wasn't going crazy. We sat in my living room, laughing and chatting. The wind howled and the rain pounded on the roof. Suddenly, the lights started flickering. "Just the storm," I said, trying to laugh it off. But when it happened again, we looked at each other, our smiles fading. It felt like something was watching us. Shivers ran down my spine. As the days passed, I couldn't shake the feeling that the diary was tied to everything. I spent hours trying to piece together its stories. Each night, the whispers returned, echoing words from its pages. I would check the windows, restless, hoping to find nothing outside. One night, I sat awake at 2 a.m., staring at the ceiling. I had so many questions. And then it happened again. The rhythmic knocking sounded from the walls. An icy chill ran down my back. Were the stories in the diary real? A voice echoed in the dark. "Liam!" It was soft but clear. My heart raced. It wasn't in my head. I froze, unsure what to do, as the knock came again. My breath caught in my throat. I had a feeling I was not alone. I got out of bed, driven by fear. I checked the front door. Nothing. I crept down the hallway, listening closely. A creeping dread settled over me. The whispers had turned into soft cries. Then I heard it again. "Liam!" It felt like the voice was right beside me. My heart pounded louder, drowning out the storm. I turned, hoping to see something. Nothing was there. All that remained was the heavy rain and the unanswered questions. I could hardly sleep after that night. The voice echoed in my mind. What did it want? I was shaken, but knew I had to find answers. The diary had been my only link so far, so I decided to revisit it in detail. The next morning, I brewed a strong cup of coffee and sat at the kitchen table. I opened the diary, flipping through the pages methodically. As the morning light streamed in, its illumination felt almost surreal. The ink was faded, but still legible. The stories were bizarre. Some spoke of visions seen in the rain, figures appearing in the downpour, trapped souls waiting for release. Others detailed encounters with shadows lurking in the corners of homes. I couldn't shake the feeling that these were more than just stories. That night, I gathered the courage to confront my fears. I planned to go back up to the attic. If I was going crazy, I wanted to know for sure. I grabbed a flashlight and climbed the staircase slowly, each step creaking ominously. The attic was, as I remembered, dim and cluttered. I scanned the boxes, half expecting to see something move. I found the diary again, and this time I noticed something different. Tucked inside, a brittle envelope caught my eye. It was sealed and looked very old. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a faded photograph. It showed a group of people huddled together under a large oak tree, their faces solemn. Just behind them, a shadow loomed, a dark figure that didn't belong. My stomach twisted. It felt like a warning. Then the silence shattered. A sharp bang came from the other side of the attic wall. I jumped, my pulse racing. Was it the house settling, or was something else there? I shined my flashlight toward the source of the sound, but the beam only illuminated dust motes dancing in the air. "Liam," came the voice again, clearer this time. It was closer. I could feel heat rising in my chest, the urge to flee or to fight. I took a step back, heart racing, but something compelled me to stay. I turned to face the wall from where the noise had come. "Who are you?" I shouted, my voice trembling. "What do you want from me?" No reply, just silence. But then I heard muffled whispers behind the wall, a chorus of disembodied voices overlapping one another. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was urgent, desperate. Then everything went dark. The attic lights flickered and went out entirely. I was plunged into darkness. Panic surged in me, and I swung my flashlight back and forth frantically, but I saw nothing but shadows. Suddenly, a loud crash erupted from below. The sound echoed throughout the house, shaking the walls. My breath hitched, and an overwhelming sense of dread washed over me. This wasn't just about the diary anymore. I realized the stories were real, and I was part of them. I needed to find out what happened in my home. With each second that passed, the urgency grew stronger. I had to know what hidden truth lay behind those whispers, and more importantly, who or what was waiting for me in the dark. The darkness felt thick, pressing against my skin as I stood alone in the attic, my heart pounding like thunder in my chest. I finally managed to steady my breath, forcing myself to focus. The crash from below echoed in my ears, piercing through my fear. I needed to figure out what was happening. With trembling hands, I flicked the flashlight on again. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating years of forgotten belongings. Old boxes, furniture draped in sheets, and dusty knickknacks filled the space. Each item felt like a potential clue, a piece of the puzzle I had yet to solve. I edged towards the door, but the uncertainty of what lay below me gnawed at my gut. Before I could second-guess myself, I took a deep breath and pushed the attic door open. The creak of the hinges was deafening in the stillness. I peered down the narrow staircase, shadows swirling around me. As I descended carefully, I forced myself to remember the stories from the diary. They spoke of things that lingered in spaces, the kind of haunting that crept into your home when you least expected it. Breadcrumbs of old legends danced in my mind, but they felt closer than simple stories now. I was living them. Reaching the bottom step, I stopped, listening. The crash had silenced. It felt like the whole house was holding its breath. I glanced toward the living room where I had heard the noise. Someone or something had to be there. "Hello?" My voice was barely above a whisper. Silence answered. Gathering every ounce of courage, I turned the corner. The faint beam from my flashlight revealed the mess in the living room. A shelf had toppled over, books scattered across the floor like fallen leaves. I crouched to investigate, desperately wanting to believe it was just an accident, but my instincts screamed otherwise. That's when I saw it. A footprint, slightly darker than the dust covering the floor. It was small, almost as if a child had wandered in. My stomach twisted. This was my home, and I had never felt such unease in it before. I stood up quickly, heart racing. The air grew colder, and I shivered. A faint whisper brushed past me, soft and incomprehensible. It sent a jolt of fear straight to my core. I turned to face the voice, ready to demand answers, but I found myself staring into the empty room. And then I remembered the photograph. I rushed back to the attic, grabbing it from the diary. My flashlight flickered as I held it in front of me, squinting at the faces. The solemn expressions were practically begging to be understood. The shadow behind them, it was the same shape as the footprints. I dug through the boxes, looking for more answers, my heart racing. The attic had secrets, and I was determined to uncover them. But in that moment, the house groaned again, louder this time, as if it were responding to my quest for the truth. Then, without warning, the front door slammed open. I froze. Someone was in the house. I had to decide. Would I confront this uninvited guest, or should I hide? That question raced through my mind as my breath quickened. It felt as if the confrontation I'd feared the most had arrived. As the door swung wide, I felt a knot form in my stomach. The gust of wind that rushed in with it chilled my skin, but it was the thought of someone or something waiting just beyond the threshold that truly terrified me. In that moment, I knew I had to act. I quickly ducked behind the larger box in the corner, clutching the flashlight like a lifeline. The beam flickered, casting long, dancing shadows against the walls. The atmosphere was heavy, a mix of unease and an almost palpable anticipation. Footsteps echoed through the hallway, slow and deliberate. They were distinctly human, but there was something off about them. I strained to listen. The sound of my own breathing felt deafening, meeting the unfamiliar rhythm coming from below. I watched as a figure slowly emerged into the living room. At first, it was just a silhouette, backlit by the door, but soon enough, the shape took form. It was a boy, no older than 10. His clothes were tattered, dirty, and he appeared drenched, like he had just stepped in from a storm. My heart raced, but I couldn't make sense of it. How had he gotten in? "Come out." The voice was barely a whisper, but there was a sense of urgency laced in the words. My eyes widened. Did he know I was here? The boy stepped further into the room, glancing around as he called out again, a look of desperation twisting his features. "Help me!" I hesitated, torn between fear and instinct. The stories from the diary ran through my mind, warning me about the things that lingered. But he looked so vulnerable, so lost. Was he one of them? The air thickened as he walked past the toppled shelf, then slowly turned to face me, eyebrows knitted in confusion. "Why are you hiding?" His blue eyes were wide and sincere, cutting through my fear. I couldn't tell if I was still dreaming or if this was real. "Who are you?" I managed to ask, my voice hoarse. I don't know," he stammered, his gaze flickering to the shadows. "I just got here. I can't remember." My heart sank. The moment felt heavy with unspoken truths. Was he trapped here too? I took a cautious step forward, the feeling of dread tugging at me even as I felt compassion growing for this lost child. "How did you get in?" He shook his head violently, his expression morphing from confusion to fear. "I heard it call me. I didn't want to come. It felt wrong." Outside, the wind howled, almost joining the boy's panic. It felt like the house reacted, walls creaking and shifting like it had a life of its own. I glanced back at the attic door, torn between the boy and the safety of the unknown above me. "Stay with me," I said, feeling a surge of determination. But just as I reached out, the lights flickered and went out. The dark swallowed us whole. "Where are you?" The boy's voice trembled in the pitch blackness. "I'm here!" I shouted, my own panic rising. Then came the whisper, softer this time, as if it had been lurking in the shadows all along. "It's not safe. Get out." I froze. Would running away save us, or would it seal our fate in this haunted house? The silence stretched thin, wrapping around us like a suffocating blanket. I was frozen, caught in the grip of fear and uncertainty. The boy's shaky breath was the only sound, echoing in the darkness. I could feel the weight of the shadows pressing closer. "Did you hear that?" he whispered, panic threading through his voice. Before I could respond, a loud crash echoed from somewhere in the house, sending a surge of adrenaline through me. "What was that?" I gasped. The sound had come from behind the attic door. My instincts screamed for me to run. The boy edged closer, his heartbeat thudding loudly in the stillness. "I don't want to be here anymore," he said, eyes wide with terror. "Neither do I," admitted, fighting to keep my voice steady. I thought of the journal I had found earlier, its vague warnings swirling in my mind. It had hinted at something worse, something that stirred within these walls. "Maybe we can find a way out," I suggested, my mind racing. "We just need to move." I stepped cautiously toward the nearest window, praying the glass wouldn't be stuck like everything else in this place. The small bit of moonlight that filtered in was our only hope. As I approached, I could hear the wind pick up outside, rattling the panes. A shiver ran down my spine. I pressed my fingers against the cold surface, struggling to see through the darkness. But before I could shove it open, another rumble sounded from above, closer this time. "Don't!" the boy cried, backing away. His reaction startled me, and I nearly dropped my flashlight. "Why not?" I asked, confused. "They told me, if you make noise, they come." Panic tightened my chest. "Who told you? Who are they?" The boy's gaze shifted to the attic, his eyes filled with dread. I don't remember. It's like they take bits of me." "What do you mean?" I prodded, desperate to hold on to some thread of normalcy. "They want to keep me." His voice trembled. "Just like the others." My heart raced again, hammering against my ribs. Others? I couldn't shake the feeling that the situation was spiraling out of control. I forced myself to take shaky breaths, trying to think as clearly as possible. "Listen, we have to be quiet. If they want you, we'll find a way to make a plan." As I knelt to reassure him, the flashlight flickered ominously before cutting out entirely. Utter darkness consumed us again. "Get away from him," came the low and chilling voice from somewhere just beyond my reach. My body froze, and the cold sweat prickled my neck. There was no sound but the boy's soft whimper. Then I felt the breath of something near my ear. I needed to get out, now. I felt around in the darkness, desperation fueling my frantic search for the door. The sound of something moving made my heart pound. And then I saw it, a shadow shifting by the faint outline of the attic door. It was coming for us. I stumbled back, my heart racing as the shadow approached. The outlines blurred in the dark, twisting and flickering like flames. "We have to go," I whispered urgently, grabbing the boy's arm. But he didn't move. "If we run, they'll know," he gasped, his fear anchoring him in place. I couldn't bear the thought of waiting for whatever was lurking in the darkness. I pulled him toward the window I had almost reached before. "Shh, just follow me," I urged, praying he would listen. The old wood beneath my feet creaked ominously as we moved. I focused on the window, the thought of escape driving every other fear from my mind. But then the attic door creaked open, and a sliver of pale light separated the darkness. My breath caught. It felt like a bad omen. "Please don't," the boy whimpered. I risked a glance toward the expanding gap. The shadow had retreated, but not vanished. I could make out a shape, vaguely human. "Time to come play," the voice echoed, cruel and inviting, like it knew our worst fears. I felt bile rise in my throat. "Are you playing?" it continued, a twisted mockery of a child's game. "Don't look at it," I hissed at the boy, who was clearly mesmerized. I felt the blood drain from my face as I shook him lightly. "We can't stay here." Finally, he jerked out of his trance, and I pulled him toward the window again. Without thinking, I shoved my shoulder against the frame. The glass rattled but held firm. I cursed silently under my breath. "Don't be loud," the boy whispered, looking back at the door. "They'll come." I swallowed hard and pressed my palms against the cold glass, willing it to open. My mind raced with options, but nothing appeared safe. The shadow shifted again, edging closer to the doorway. "Dan, are you in there?" A voice called from below, breaking through the haunting tension. Relief shot through me. "Dan!" "Someone's outside," I whispered fiercely, a flicker of hope igniting in my chest. "If we can reach the stairs." But before I could finish, the attic shuddered. The walls groaned as if they were alive, echoing a sinister familiarity. The boy turned wide-eyed. "They don't like it when others are here." I took a deep breath and steeled myself. "We have to risk it." I took a tentative step back toward the door. "I'm going to check. Stay here and stay quiet," I instructed, hoping he would obey. "No!" he cried, reaching for me. "You can't, if you go out there." "Trust me," I said, my voice edging toward panic. His eyes screamed fear, but I couldn't let it paralyze me. I carefully moved toward the door, taking one agonizing step at a time. In that moment, I could almost feel the eyes of the shadow on me. Then everything went dark. The door slammed shut behind me. I gasped and whipped around, panic bubbling up. I realized I was alone, and then I heard it. Soft footsteps behind me. I froze, the sound sending chills down my spine. Soft, deliberate footsteps echoed in the darkness around me. I strained to hear over the pounding of my heart, but the attic had swallowed all the light and sound, leaving only unsettling silence, laced with the whispers of that cruel voice. "Dan." It was a faint call, barely above a whisper. The voice searched through the stillness like a thread weaving through the threads of my mind. It wasn't the voice of the boy. It was different, a husky rasp that pulled me in. "Who's there?" I called out, trying to sound braver than I felt. My voice came out small, trembling with unease. I stepped back from the door, my hands brushing against the rough wall. I needed to find a way out of this place. The footsteps shifted, quickening, a staccato rhythm that seemed to creep closer. I blinked into the darkness where nothing but shadows remained. My fingers fumbled against the wall, racing along the splintered wood. There had to be a way to escape this place. Suddenly, a shadow detached itself from the corner, coalescing into a figure that seemed to absorb the faintest glimmer of light. My breath caught. This was not the kind of horror I had braced myself for. "Dan," it crooned again. The voice was filled with an unfathomable longing, as if it craved my presence. Panic surged in my chest. "Come play with us." I turned on my heel, bolting toward where I hoped the stairs were, where I imagined safety lay beyond the mountain of fear. The weight of every step felt heavier, dragging me back toward the shadow. I could hear the faint sound of laughter echoing from the depths of the darkness, a sickly sweet melody that twisted my stomach. "I don't want to play," I shouted, the desperation creeping into my voice. "Let me go!" The laughter crescendoed. "But it's so much fun!" The joyful tone felt so wrong against the backdrop of fear pulsating inside me. It was mocking, an invitation I didn't want. I reached the edge of the attic. A glimmer broke through the darkness. The bottom of the staircase. I could hear the warmth of safety echoing nearby, a distant promise pulling at my racing heart. But before I could launch myself down, another shadow flickered to life beside the first. Two figures stood there, outlined against the far wall. For a terrifying moment, I was tempted to turn and confront them, to face whatever specters had come from my nightmares. But I didn't have the strength. I turned back toward the door, just as the shadows started to swirl, barriers tightening around me. Then, in a breath-seizing instant, I saw it, glinting like a flashing beacon, my phone lying just outside the attic door. "That's mine!" I gasped, lunging for it. But in doing so, I stumbled into the shadows. The ground felt like it shifted beneath me. I reached for the phone with a surge of desperation. That's when I felt the cold grip of fingers wrapping around my wrist. "Let's play," they whispered. I screamed! I jerked back, my scream echoing off the walls. The fingers tightened, colder than ice, sending shockwaves of terror racing through my body. I could barely see the figures now. They loomed larger as fear drowned my thoughts. Suddenly, a bright light cut through the attic, illuminating the dark corners. I squinted against the sudden brightness, which felt dangerously warm amidst the chilling clutch around my wrist. It was my phone, casting an eerie glow. I focused on it, desperate to remember why I had reached for it. "Let me go!" I cried again, flinging my other hand back, trying to pry their grip free. The shadowed fingers clung tighter, as if they fed off my fear. "Stay with us, Dan," the voice urged, coiling like smoke around my mind. "We miss you." I squeezed my eyes shut, fighting the urge to succumb to their call. It felt wrong, like I was being drawn into a trap disguised as comfort. "Not now! I can't!" I shouted, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. The light flickered, casting an undulating glow over the figures. I opened my eyes, locking onto their forms. Both were children. I could see that much. With hollow eyes and twisted smiles, they beckoned me forward. One had long, tangled hair. The other wore a tattered shirt, sleeves too short. "Come play!" they chimed again. The warmth of my phone pulsed in my hand, a lifeline I could not drop. I needed a plan. Heart racing, I yanked my arm away, the movement surprising them for a beat. I stumbled back, landing hard against the edge of the staircase. "Stop!" I yelled, rising to my feet. Their expressions twisted into pouts, the playful cheer fading into something dark and desperate. "We promised you'd never leave," the girl whispered, her voice cracking. "You promised!" That word twisted my stomach. I didn't understand. I didn't remember making any promises. The shadows danced toward me, the laughter turning into soft weeping, as if my resistance caused them real pain. In that moment, determination flared up. I darted past the ghostly children, racing for the stairs. My feet pounded against the worn steps, and I didn't look back. But just as I reached the ground floor, a voice pierced the silence. "You can't escape, Dan." I halted, frozen in dread. A tall shadow stood in the doorway, blocking my path out. The silhouette was familiar, but twisted, like a reflection of someone I once trusted. "What do you want?" I gasped, breathless and terrified. "Just like them, I miss you," the shadow said, taking a step forward. That was when my phone blinked off, plunging me back into darkness. I felt my heart stop. I held my breath. The laughter picked up again, surrounding me, devoid of any comfort. There was no escape. I woke up to the sound of dripping water. It felt like I was emerging from a deep sleep or a heavy fog. I struggled to remember how I'd gotten here, but the last thing I remembered was that suffocating darkness. My heart still raced, a wild drumbeat echoing in the silence around me. I pushed myself up, rubbing my eyes. They felt heavy, as if I'd been asleep for hours. I was no longer in the attic, but in what seemed to be a tiny, cramped room. The walls were bare and peeling. The air was stale, and that nagging drip was incessant, each drop resonating through the emptiness. "Hello?" I croaked, my voice raspy and weak. No answer, just the sound of water. The soft glow of my phone flickered back to life, casting a weak light around the room. My heart skipped when I looked at the screen. The time read 3:15 a.m. I had no idea how long I'd been in that dark space. With shaky hands, I turned on the flashlight feature. Shadows danced around me, but I forced myself to breathe, pushing the fear down. I needed to explore. I stood and scanned the modest room. There was nothing but dust-covered furniture and curtains that hung limply, their fabric faded and torn. A small window was cracked open, its broken frame letting in the faint sound of rain. I walked over, careful of the creaking floorboards, and peered outside. What greeted me sent a chill up my spine. The entire street was shrouded in thick fog, rain pouring down like a curtain, blurring any familiar shapes. I recognized the neighborhood, but everything felt eerie and wrong. The wind howled, echoing through the trees, making their branches sway like skeletal fingers in the dark. "Dan!" a voice broke through the rain, familiar yet distant. "Dan, can you hear me?" I rushed to the door, opening it hesitantly. The voice was softer now, almost like a whisper. "Come back, Dan." My feet moved before I could think, the fear of being alone gripping me. I stepped into the hallway, dimly lit and filled with shadows that lurked around every corner. The voice called again, tantalizingly close. "You can't hide. We're waiting for you." I stumbled forward, instinct pulling me down the dark hall. The walls seemed to pulsate with the rhythm of my heartbeat. I felt as if the house itself held its breath, waiting for what was to come. In a room at the end of the hall, the door stood ajar. I pushed it open, expecting another empty space. Instead, I found a small gathering of the very figures I'd seen before, the children. They stood there, the dim light revealing their hollow eyes and distorted smiles. This time, there was no playing. They reached for me, their fingers like grasping vines snagging my shirt. Panic surged through me. "No! Get away!" I yelled, but my voice came out cracked and desperate. "Come play with us, Dan. It's been so long." The girl's voice hitched, and I sensed a deeper meaning there, but I wasn't falling for it again. Then everything shifted again, like the room around me warped and twisted, the laughter fading into something much darker. That's when I noticed something lying in the corner. A familiar, tattered shirt. One I had thought lost long ago. My blood ran cold. Who had they taken? What did they want from me? I had to find out. There was no other choice. I bolted from the room, heart hammering in my chest. The laughter of the children faded as I sprinted down the hallway, their desperate screams tugging at my mind. "Please don't leave us," echoed behind me, but the urgency to escape eclipsed their pleas. The house felt alive, and with every step I took, it seemed as if it were twisting, stretching to contain me. The shadows slid along the walls like hungry beasts, watching me run. I burst through a door at the end of the hallway, expecting to find safety. Instead, I stumbled into the living room, familiar yet distorted in the dim glow of my phone. The furniture was overturned, the shelves empty, like the house had been ransacked. Silence settled heavily, and I felt as though I had entered a tomb. "Liam!" The whisper wrapped around me, soft and pleading. It was the same voice that haunted my nights, threading through the very fabric of the air. My breath caught. Was it the boy, or something worse lurking in the corners of my mind? "Enough!" I shouted into the silence, my voice trembling yet firm. "I'm not playing any more." As if on cue, the floorboards creaked, a deep rumble reverberating from below. I stepped back, instinctively ready to run, but the shadows at the doorway flickered and melted into a dark shape that emerged. The weight of its presence suffocated me. "Where do you think you're going, Danny?" The shadow growled, its voice a warped version of a familiar tone. "You can't escape us. You belong here." I felt my resolve weaken, but I squared my shoulders and gritted my teeth.
I won't let you take me. I am not yours. My defiance fueled a flickering hope. With a surge of adrenaline, I hurtled toward the hallway, the shadows closing in on my heels. My pulse raced as I thundered down the stairs, slipping on the uneven floor. I reached for the front door, flinging it open to the storm outside. The rain pelted my face, each drop seeping into my skin as I dashed forward. I didn't look back. I could hear the laughter from the house echoing in the tempest, mingling with the whisper of wind and rain. Just as I thought I would reach the freedom of the street, a hand closed around my ankle, holding me in place. I cried out, feeling a cold grip around my limbs. "No!" I yelled, pulling against the anguish that enveloped me. My hand shot out to grasp the porch railing, and with one frantic heave, I tore free from the creature's grasp. I stumbled down the steps, feeling the moisture-soaked earth beneath my feet. The shadows swirled at the doorway, writhing in fury, but I surged forward, propelled by fear and desperation. Wet grass sloshed beneath my shoes as I ran toward the road, the familiar eeriness of the fog swirling around me. I turned to look back one last time. As I stood on the threshold of that twisted house I once called home, I thought I saw the boy's face appearing momentarily in the window, wide eyes filled with an indescribable longing. "You promised," he mouthed silently. Heart-wrenching, I shook my head. I turned and fled down the road, the rain washing over me, feeling both heavy and freeing all at once. I could still hear them behind me, the echoes of laughter, children's cries, and the deep growl of the shadows. I ran and ran until my legs burned, until my lungs screamed. Several blocks away, I finally slowed, gasping for breath as I leaned against a lamp-post. The rain poured down, each drop seeming to wash away the remnants of fear. But as I looked back, I felt a chill trickle down my spine. The house stood still, an ominous figure in the night, still watching, still waiting. I never returned to that street, but sometimes in the quiet hours I hear whispers on the wind. I wonder if he still waits there, lost between the worlds, trying to remind me of the promise I never made. I moved to a different city after that, but maybe it was never about the place. It was about something deeper, something that lingers like fog after the storm.